Good afternoon, everyone who's watching. If it's afternoon or morning or evening, I'm Peter Miller. I'm the president of the American Academy in Rome, and I'm excited to share with you tonight, or this afternoon, or this morning, depending on where you are, um, some picture of the Academy, not only through my words, not only through those of Sean Miller, who's in charge of the Rome Prize application process, and will tell you about some of its details in a moment, but also through the eyes of two recent Rome Prize winners, Katie Kitamura and Jackie Murray, whom you'll hear from separately and together towards the end of today's program, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions. So I'm actually speaking to you from Rome, and um, and so I speak with kind of a very present enthusiasm for the Academy. And I was thinking just before we went live today, what's so special about the Academy? And I could probably have answered that question any number of ways. But what I was thinking about this evening, having spent just a few days here now on this trip, is that in addition to all the other things, which I'll talk about in a moment, this is an institution with a really pronounced communal life that is uh, fun and incredibly stimulating intellectually and creatively at the same time. And it's stimulating because it's fun. It's not a community of monks who live in their cells, emerge for their communal meals in silence at a refectory table, and then go back to their cells. On the contrary, this is an institution where the creativity is actually fired from the experience of interaction. And that, I think, is really one of the extraordinary things about the institution, which was founded 130 years ago with a real sense of national purpose. It was founded at the Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893. If Henry Adams were really a visionary, he would have included a discussion of the American Academy in Rome in his chapter on the Virgin and the Dynamo. The sense that America was a burgeoning industrial power, but needed a boost in its cultural and creative life was the idea that spurred Charles McKim to set forth the idea of the Academy very clearly to his friend, the architect Daniel Burnham, the architect of Chicago, that the United States needed to bring back a kind of spirit to energize and elevate the creative life of the United States. And from these two sources, from antiquity as interpreted by scholars, from antiquity as interpreted by architects, that was initially the two pillars of the institution. We now have 12 different fields in which we offer fellowships. This idea of enhancing the intellectual and aesthetic culture of the United States really was carried out through the Rome Prize, through bringing people to Rome and then returning to the United States and living their creative life, and so creating the 20th century culture of the United States. I'm not a big believer in prizes, but we now have kind of ubiquitously on our communications and website the number of significant prizes, from Guggenheim's to MacArthur's to Nobel's and Pritzker's, won by our fellows and residents. And it's a formidable number, which testifies to the successful implementation of the vision of that founding generation. But what I would add to that is that not only was there a national vision, I think one of the things that the Academy has represented over the years is also an adaptability to change over time. That's to say, we started with a much narrower vision of what the Rome Prize was and who the Rome Prize was for. And both of those have significantly broadened, especially I would say in the last 20 years or so. So not only in terms of fields, but in terms of the questions within fields that we're interested in. One of the aspirations of the institution is not just to reward promising and exceptional scholars and artists, but also through the Rome Prize process to also help shape the fields in which those exceptional artists and scholars practice. And this desire of the institution to make a contribution to the intellectual and cultural life of the United States through its fellowship program is not only something that's important, but also inspires us to re-envision what the fellowship program can be. So this year, as many of you know, we've created a new pilot Rome Prize that is, in the first instance, a collaboration. We've never offered a fully collaborative prize before. It's also a collaboration between an artist and a scholar. We are unique in the landscape of the Roman academies, which is itself a unique intellectual and cultural landscape, for having an equal number and a significant number of artists and scholars under our many roofs. And there's been a lot of collaboration. Katie herself was involved in one last year. The collaborations have all evolved spontaneously out of the kind of internal combustion engine of our palace on top of a hill in Rome. Since we've come to value these collaborations so much, we've also come to feel like leaving it to serendipity, while romantic, might actually not always be in the institution's best interest, but rather, if we think that collaboration between scholars and artists is what sets us apart, if we think that the collaboration between scholars and artists is precisely what can help offer answers to some important contemporary problems, or at least help us reframe the questions more precisely so that others can take a whack at answering them, then we thought it behooves us to actually offer, to hardwire those collaborations a priori. And so that's something that we've done this year. And then finally, if we believe in collaboration, and if we believe specifically in the collaboration potential of the collaboration between scholars and artists to help refine the questions that are important today, we also thought that we should step out in front of the curtain and say what problems the institution thinks are important today. And so we've created a collaborative Rome Prize between scholars and artists to work on environmental arts and humanities, because we do think, based on our experience with the Rome Sustainable Food Project that's in its 18th year, based on the extensive gardens that we have on our hilltop in Rome, that we have an ability through the wonderful people who come through each year to rethink the challenges of environment through the lenses of the arts and humanities. And so that's something very exciting that we're doing this year that doesn't change what we're doing, but actually it's an example of something which I think the Academy has been doing for its 131 years. And that is grow from within, from the things that we are doing, make changes to adapt and meet the challenges of the future. So I'm convinced that the Academy is a unique and exciting environment and resource for all people engaged deeply and passionately with their art and scholarship. It's a place where a single person's practice intersects and is amplified by the parallel and interweaving practices of others, not just the Rome Prize Fellows, but also we have residents and visitors who come through every year. It's a dynamic intellectual community And I'll just say in concluding my words tonight, that I invite all of you who are listening to apply to be members of this institution, because I think it offers enormous opportunities for you. And I'll say on behalf of the institution that we learn so much from the fellows who come through, as you will hear from the two who are here tonight, exemplary as they are like so many of our fellows, our teachers in the years after their fellowships, as much as they were our guests during the years of their fellowships. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. And now I'd like to hand the Zoom box over to Sean Miller to tell you about the application process in particular. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. And thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope the information that we present will be helpful to you. A lot of the information that I'm going to go over is available on our website, so you can always refer to that if you miss something that I say. The other thing is that you should feel free to reach out to me as you're putting together your application if you have any questions. So I'm going to start by just answering the question of what is the Rome Prize. So it is a residential fellowship. We offer 2 terms, full-term fellowships, which are about 10 months, and half-term fellowships, which are about 5 months. The full term runs from early September, for example, this year was September 2nd, through early July. This year we're going through July 3rd in 2025. The half terms are, as I said, are 5 months, and they either start at the same time in September or in early February, and then end when the academy closes in early July. During that time, the winners of the prize are provided with housing, which would, for a single person, be a single room with a private bath. If you are coming with a spouse or a partner, you will be given a double room, also with a private bath. And if you're bringing your family that includes children, then you would be housed in apartments, which are not in our main building, but in a building adjacent to the main building, right next door. In addition to the housing, winners are provided meals, which are created by our Rome Sustainable Food Project. They prepare lunch and dinner Monday through Friday, and this is at no cost to the fellow. You will also be given a workspace, which will be either a study or a studio, depending on your work needs. And each fellow receives a stipend. The full-term winners receive $30,000 distributed monthly over the term of the fellowship, and half-term fellows receive $16,000 stipends, which are also distributed over the term of their fellowship. And the winners reside at the Academy's property, which is located on the Janiculum Hill in Rome. Not quite in the center of Rome, but not far from the center of Rome. You can walk to many of the well-known sites within just a few minutes. In addition, though, to these quantitative elements of the Rome Prize, there is also qualitative aspects, which some of you may have seen in our posters in recent years. We use the term time and space to think and work. And we feel that that is one of the better gifts that we do offer to Rome Prize winners. And it's not just to think and work, but it's to explore and to focus and to do what you need to do to complete your project. We also provide our Rome Prize winners with access to research facilities, to sites throughout Rome, and to Europe and the Mediterranean for research and for work-related projects. The Academy is also a great place to develop relationships, both professional and personal. Most of our Rome Prize winners, all of our Rome Prize winners, excuse me, are residing at the Academy, and they're taking their meals together. So it's a great opportunity for them to get to know each other over a long period of time. Many, as Peter suggested, start working together on collaborative projects, and some of these projects go beyond the time at the Academy. So it's a great place to develop relationships of both personal and professional nature. And it's also an opportunity for learning, growth, and development. It's a very wonderful prize, and we're really proud of it and happy to share this information with you. As many of you know, the Rome Prize is awarded in multiple categories. In the arts, we offer the fellowship in architecture, design, landscape architecture, literature, musical composition, and visual arts. On the humanities side of things, we have categories in ancient studies, historic preservation and conservation, medieval studies, Renaissance and early modern studies. And we also offer the Tsao Family Rome Prize, which is a specific prize that is for a scholar working on the historical intersection of China and the Mediterranean in arts and ideas, with particular attention to comparative research about philosophical worldviews and their cultural expression. So this fellowship is in the humanities, as suggests, and so anybody who's applying for this will also be considered in either ancient studies, ancient studies, medieval studies, Renaissance and early modern, or modern Italian, whichever is most appropriate for the research project that you're working on. And then, as Peter mentioned, this is the first year that we will be offering our collaborative Rome Prize in Environmental Arts and Humanities. And this is for, as he said, an artist and a scholar working jointly on a project that aims to expand the understanding of the way human beings relate to, experience, or process their encounters with the natural world. And I'll talk a little bit more about this prize when I get to collaborations. To be eligible for the Rome Prize, in most instances, the applicant needs to be a United States citizen. There is one exception to this, and this is for our NEH postdoctoral fellowships, which can be awarded to non-US citizens as long as they've been residents in the United States for at least 3 years. And these NEH fellowships are specifically for postdoctoral candidates in ancient studies, medieval studies, Renaissance and early modern studies, or modern Italian studies. So unfortunately, that's the only instance where a non-US citizen is able to apply, but we're happy to at least have that for those who are not US citizens. Additionally, graduate students applying for predoctoral fellowships must be finished with all of their coursework. They must be ABD at the time of their application. Previous winners of the Rome Prize are not eligible to apply, and undergraduate students are not eligible to apply. There are also other eligibility requirements for each discipline, so check our website for the specific guidelines for each category, and it'll list if there are any other eligibility requirements. The application deadline is November 1st, which is quickly approaching. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to get started as soon as possible. However, we do offer an extended deadline of November 15th. There is an additional fee to apply for the later deadline, but that is the only penalty for applying between November 2nd and November 15th. So if you need an extra 2 weeks, you may apply during that time. Just know that the fee will be slightly higher. The application requirements that we are asking for everybody, you will be submitting an online application form, a project proposal, which will explain what you're planning to do during your time in Rome, and that will be either 1 to 4 pages, depending on the category that you're applying in. We also ask for a resume or a CV, a work sample, which will vary depending on the category that you're applying to, and 3 letters of recommendation for most of our categories. The exception to that is applicants in literature, musical composition, or visual arts only need to submit the names and contact information of references. No letters are required for those 3 categories. All of the other categories the applicants for those categories must submit 3 letters. So next I want to talk briefly about joint and collaborative applications. So for many years now, we have offered collaborative applications within a particular discipline. So 2 people who meet all of the eligibility requirements and have a history of working together have been and continue to be able to apply in a particular discipline. So if you're 2 architects who have worked together and you want to apply in architecture, you're able to do so. Each of the winners will win their own prize. So you will have your own living space and your own stipend and your own meal plan. And then, as we've been talking about, this Environmental Arts and Humanities Fellowship is open this year, but this is for people in different disciplines. So an artist and a scholar, artist of any sort, either visual, digital, architectural, musical, literary, textile, performance are all acceptable. And scholars in any field, whether it's studying the past, the present, the future, the natural world, or the human world, are encouraged to apply together. And again, in this case, the collaborators will need to show a history of having worked together, and each person will receive their own prize, their own living space, their own stipend, but you will share a workspace. And as with all of our Rome Prize fellowships, and for all categories, applicants need to make clear why the work that they needs to be done in Rome. It doesn't necessarily have to be a direct connection to Rome, but you need to, in your project proposal, explain to us why Rome, or why being in Rome would be important to your work. And I can answer more questions about that if you would like during the Q&A session. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about the selection process. This year, I'll be assembling 12 juries. Each jury will represent one discipline, with the exception of the architecture and landscape architecture jury, which will review applications for architecture and landscape architecture. All the other juries, though, will be all the other categories will have an individual jury. The juries are comprised of professionals working in the discipline that is being reviewed, and we do a two-step process. The first step is that the jurors review the application materials and select their finalist. Once they've selected their finalists, those finalists are invited to New York to interview for the Rome Prize. The interviews will be hybrid this year, so the finalists will be brought to New York to meet with Peter and me and our other colleague, Jake Rivers. And then the jurors will be participating via Zoom. So you'll be talking to them through Zoom. The jurors will be making the final decision, but we just want to be there to add a personal touch to it. And all applicants will be notified of their status no later than March. The winners of the Rome Prize will be announced in April, late April, along with the jurors. So until then, the jurors remain confidential, but when we announce the winners, you'll be able to see who reviewed your materials. Finally, we're going to move on to the next section of the session here, which is discussion with our two Rome Prize winners. Today we have Katie Kitamura and Jackie Murray. Katie was at the AAR just this past year as a winner of the Joseph Brodsky Rome Prize, which is a gift of the Drew Hines Trust. Her most recent novel is Intimacies. It's one of the New York Times 10 best books of 2021 and one of Barack Obama's favorite books of 2021. It was longlisted for the National Book Award and the PEN/Faulkner Award. In addition to being a recipient of the Rome Prize in Literature, Katie has also received the Berlin Prize at the American Academy of Berlin and the Prix Littéraire Lucien Barrier. Katie's work has been translated into 21 languages and is being adapted for film and television. Her forthcoming novel, Audition, will be published in 2025. Our other guest today is Jackie Murray, who was a recipient of the Andrew High School National Endowment for the Humanities Postdoctoral Rome Prize for the 2011-2012 academic year. Jackie is an expert on Imperial Greek literature, Hellenistic poetry, and the reception of classics and African-American and Afro-Caribbean literature. She received her PhD in classics from the University of Washington, and she is currently an associate professor in the Department of Classics at the University of Buffalo. In addition to receiving the Rome Prize, Jackie has also received a fellowship from the American Academy in Berlin and the Center for Hellenistic Studies and the University of Cincinnati. So I'm pleased to welcome both Katie and Jackie, and I want to thank them both for being here. And so yes, thank you both. So I'm just going to start by asking you a question. Asking each of you the same question for this first one anyhow. And you'll probably have different answers because one of you is more recent, the other one received your fellowship 12 years ago. So what impact did the fellowship have on your work, on you, and how did it change your life? So do we want to start with Jackie since you've had a little more time for.
Yeah, for the impact. Well, I can say that the Rome Prize was extremely transformative. I think that's like the takeaway, you could say. Changed the way in which I approach my research, in that um, I have a much more tendency to collaborate with people now. I have quite a few collaborative projects going, including a book project, and also to incorporate a more visual art kind of approach to yeah, to many of the projects. In fact, the project that I did there, I got a lot of help from the artists in trying to explain the astronomy involved in my project, for ordinary folks who don't um, deal with astronomy. Uh, have an artistic perspective on how to do that was really, really useful for me. So yeah, so I definitely think now I'm more inclined to apply to a residential fellowship than before, mainly because of the experiences that you get, the people that you meet, the relationships that you generate. So yeah, I highly recommend it.
Katie.
Um, so I was ejected from Paradise about 9 months ago. So it's a little bit harder for me to say how it's affected me in the long term. But one thing that has really stayed with me is that during my time at the academy, I was able to move away from this kind of compulsion to productivity, which is so oppositional to actually making art or making work of any kind. And I think, in fact, I was tremendously productive during the time that I was at the academy. But what was most special was really the kind of sense of recognizing that you do need free time, you do need to kind of let your brain rest, you need to be open to different influences, possibilities, much like what Jackie was saying. You kind of learn a different way of being and a different way of relating to your work. And I can already feel that that has changed the way that I'm writing. So that has really been a thrill. And yeah, I mean, I would say that the Academy is one of the rare places where the catalog copy is actually very reflective of the experience itself. Everything that, you know, that Peter said, everything that we'll say in this session, everything that you read on the website, that's actually what it is like. It's an incredibly diverse and dynamic community. It is transformative, as Jackie said. And so, yeah, I could not encourage people more strongly to apply.
Did you feel, and this is for both of you as well, did you feel the importance of the Rome Prize at the time of your fellowship while you were there, or is it an awareness that kind of dawned on you after you left? And if not later, why do you think that's so? If not until later, sorry. But...
Do you want me to go first?
Sure, yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah.
Well, I think I had the sense of it when I had it, as well as now. Mainly because I'm in ancient studies, so it's a big deal in ancient studies to have a Rome Prize. And so for me, it was always an amazing thing that it's going to be an important milestone in my career if I have one. So yeah, to me it was immediate. I knew it going in. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I was much like Jackie. I was very aware of the lineage of people who had won the Rome Prize in literature, and I felt incredibly honored and very, very lucky to have been selected to spend time at the Academy. I was telling the others before the kind of session went official that my son, I came with my family, and my son, on the other hand, said just the other month that he regretted not making the most of his time in Rome, and he felt that he'd squandered these kind of magical moments that he had with the opportunity. So obviously he felt that way, but I think the minute I arrived at the Academy, I knew it was a very, very special place. I think I had a kind of mental clock that was counting down because I was only there for 5 months. But yeah, I felt the significance of the prize. I think in fact, Sean, as soon as you called and told me that I'd won, I think I possibly had the most praised response that you had that day.
Okay.
Yeah. Screaming down the hallway saying,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think Sean was like, that is the loudest anybody has been so far.
Yeah, for those participating, I'm the one who gets to make the lucky call. So I get really great responses, and it's a really wonderful part of my job, I have to say. And for those out there, so the people who are out there now and considering applying, they don't, most of them probably don't have any experience at the academy. So I guess the next question I would ask is, what expectations did you have before arriving? And then what about the fellowship and or the American Academy in Rome surprised you most after having done your fellowship or while during your fellowship?
Do you want to go first?
Jackie, do you want me to go first since I've made you go first every time? I mean, I think the location of the academy, it is a really, really special place. I mean, Peter alluded to that at the very beginning, but it is a magical place, and it is, when you are there, every detail has been thought through, and everything has been made to make your life easier, so that all you really need to do is work, and that will really never happen in any other circumstances again in your life. So it's a really, really magical thing. Your meals are catered. Somebody's putting on afternoon tea for your children. It is just a kind of magical experience. They're arranging excursions all the time. You can do as little or as much as you would like to. I think the thing that that surprised me, or that I didn't anticipate, was the degree to which it is truly a community that is not simply in Rome, but extends once you come back home as well. You really do feel like you are part of this institution in a way. And I've done a number of fellowships. I don't think I've ever felt that way before. It's almost like your alma mater in some way. You feel a kind of pride in and an investment in the institution. I think that's really special.
Yeah, I'll have to agree 100% with all of that, because it's definitely true. Coming to the academy, I kind of, again, I had, as an ancient studies person, with going to Rome a little bit more directly connected to my research. So I kind of knew where the academy was, and I had actually been to some kind of soiree literally the year before I even thought of applying. and and so I kind of knew, and I'd already used the library as well in there. So I kind of knew what facilities were like, and what kind of events might happen there. But it's really eye-opening in terms of just the different kinds of conversations you can have. In my year, they started the conversations program, so that was new, and that was interesting. The conversations you have over dinner, that it will blow your mind, because you get to meet all these different people, not just the fellows that are always going to be very interesting, but also guests and visitors. You sit down beside, oh, this guy's the expert on what I'm working on. He just happened to show up in Rome, and I get to sit beside him. And so it's really again, I keep harping on transformative, but it really is, in terms of how it can change your experience of your work, or even what you want to do, the trajectory of your career, all of it. And then the lifelong friendships that you made. I'm very in contact with pretty much everyone in my year, and we're still really good friends. So that's also a really great takeaway, one could say, from the experience.
Great, thank you.
If I could just jump in, Sean.
Yes.
One of the interesting things that I think underpins a lot of what Katie and Jackie have been saying is this strange phenomenon whereby every person who passes through the portals of the building seems to relax. And what that does is that it turns every conversation, there's no small talk. Like, every conversation is a real conversation. There's no kind of warm up, there's no sparring, there's no posturing. It's the better version of the stereotype of the long haul plane flight where you sit down next to somebody and you pour out your soul and they pour out theirs. The only difference is that at the end of that flight, you go your separate ways. You never talk to each other, and there may not have been any reason for you ever to talk again. Whereas at the academy, you'll have dinner that night or lunch the next day, and you have everything in common already. And so the possibilities of moving from not knowing people to having fast friends, intimate colleagues, being able to talk about details of work or family life or future, grow exponentially over time, but very quickly over time. So that's something that's very hard to describe, but weirdly happens all the time.
Mhm.
Yes. Thank you, Peter. One more question, or yeah, one other question I wanted to ask is what just about what you're working on now. What are each of you working on at the moment, and are there any traces of your time at the AAR in the work that you're doing now?
I'm working on a new novel. I finished a novel while I was at the Academy, which is coming out next year, and then I wrote about half of a new novel, and I'm actually going to be in Rome this weekend and will be interviewing some of my old colleagues to extract information from them, research information for them. I mean, I've always been a very tentative researcher, I would say, and that is one thing truly that the Academy has helped me with tremendously. I think I've become a much more adept researcher, but I'm going back to Rome, and I'm going to be talking to some of the last year's fellows and asking them for some stuff for the book I'm working on now.
Excellent. Jackie?
Well, I'm working on a collaborative book project with someone who used to be my next door neighbor. So again, this idea of like, living and working with a colleague. So my next door neighbor he was teaching at Transylvania University, and I was teaching at University of Kentucky. They're in the same city, and we lived literally next door to each other. We'd have dinner, have these conversations, and then out of the conversations came our book project on the idea and image of slavery in Plato's Republic, or Plato's Dialogues, actually. So he and I are working on a couple of articles together and a book project that's we're going to be working on that at the Center for Atlantic Studies next semester. And then I'm also going to turn my project from the Rome Prize into a book. Instead of just an article, I'm actually going to focus on the astronomy in the Argonautica and write that up as a book. Hopefully also next year. It'd be great to get that done. And then I have a whole bunch of other projects, but in terms of the projects that I think are related to my time in Rome, yeah, those are the two where the same kind of atmosphere generated one of them, and the other one is the sequel to the first one. So.
Great. Very good. And one last question before we go to the Q&A, open it up for Q&A is, I mean, just simply, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you think is important to share with the people online about their about your experience that you think they should know about the Academy? And if not, that's fine. We can. But
there is something I'd like to say, which is that I mean, I've never needed a fellowship more than when I had children. Before I had children, I had time to write. I had children, I had less time to write. And it's very, very difficult to do many fellowships with a family. The Academy in Rome makes it incredibly easy to bring your family with you. Everything, I mean, Sean, you did incredible work in the run-up helping us find a school. Everything is kind of, it's a very smooth path, and then the community itself is extraordinarily generous to children. I don't think I'm wrong or stretching the remit of the Academy to say that children are kind of integral to the life of the Academy. There are Halloween parties and holiday parties that are really designed for the children. There was an architecture resident who would make drawings with my son, several times over the course of his stay at the Academy. People are extraordinarily generous. If you have children, and if that has been preventing you from applying for these kinds of fellowships, I would say this is one where absolutely you will have the institutional and the personal support to really give your family a wonderful experience in a beautiful city.
Here, thank you.
Yeah, and I agree that you shouldn't underestimate just how much comes if someone else is making your meals, someone else is even just making your meals, just that. But it really does free up a lot of time, and yeah, the amount of headspace you get because nobody's pressuring you to do anything. Really, you're not really pressured to do anything while you're there. And so you feel much more creative, much freer to get things done. And so you are more productive, even though you might feel like you're not, you're actually being quite productive. So I would say, yeah, that's something to prepare yourself for. Like, you don't have to make your own meals. Just think about that.
Yes.
And the meals are amazing. And that's the other part.
Yes.
You're in Rome.
Okay, well, let's ask our those viewing if they want to have any questions for us. So if anybody has any questions, you just put them in the Q&A section. And I would say, since this is a rare opportunity to get to talk to two winners of the Rome Prize, maybe focus your questions more towards them. If you have general questions about the Rome Prize, you can send those to me or give me a call, and I'd be happy to answer those. But I would say if there are questions if you can focus your questions more towards Katie and Jackie, that would be great. And Peter, is there anything else you wanted to add before we go into the Q&A?
No, I mean, I think everybody's spoken really beautifully, and I guess I would just say one thing. Jackie mentioned the food. We could talk about the way Alice Waters thinks about the Academy as an extension of Chez Panisse, as she described it to me last spring. But I would also want to say that the kitchen garden, the gardens that we have with the trees that we have, it's not just nice. It's a research facility in the way in which, for Epicurus, the garden in Athens was a research facility. That's to say, it's a place to stir the mind to ask questions. And I think that's a nice way to think about what the the physical aspect is as beautiful as it appears in the pictures, but it's not just an ornament.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Peter. And okay, so we have a question for Katie. How was your children's adaptation to Rome? How did your children adapt to Rome?
Incredibly well. And in fact, I think all of the children, my sense was that all of the children who were in my cohort did really, really well. It helps that the Academy really supports families in that it's not, you're not the only people with children there. There are multiple families, and there's much of the time there were a little group of children running from apartment to apartment and kind of running around, I think illicitly around the garden as well. So, they felt very, very welcomed. I'll never forget really on our second day there, Elisa, who's the director in Rome of the Academy, she took the children on a tour of the Academy, and they said, "This is your Academy." And she took them to the gardens. She had arranged for little pastries for them. And so I think they felt incredibly, they felt, they were not, I don't know, they felt almost more quickly at home than I did. I was still kind of in awe of the settings, and they were just racing around like the place was theirs. They had a very, very good experience at school as well. Sean was tremendously helpful in helping us find the right school for the children, and the other fellows as well from the previous year were able to give me quite granular information about the schools. But I think, the setting and the schools are the two main things, and that worked out very, very well for us.
Thank you. Next question. Can both of you talk about the role Rome played in your applications? Yeah.
I can go first on this one.
Sure.
Yeah, since that is a very important part of the application, like why you need to be in Rome, other than it's Rome. Getting past that, oh, it's Rome and that's good enough. is important. And I'm in ancient studies, so it's even harder because it's like it's Rome and it's ancient studies seems pretty obvious, but actually, I thought a bit more about it and in my application, and one of the things because at the time I was at a small liberal arts college, didn't have a very good library, certainly for what I wanted to do, and this is actually the reason why I had already been to Rome before, is because I worked out some great deal with my landlord, whereby in the summer, because it's Saratoga Springs, with the summer, she can make as much money renting to me in that summer as I would for the whole year. So every summer I'd go somewhere, either Rome or Germany, to do research, and having a really good research library at my disposal was really important for me in getting my work done. And then also Rome for me had quite a few people still, and at the time, work on Hellenistic poetry that live and or in the university system in Rome. And so I had a lot of contact with a lot of people there that were working on in my area. So those are two things I kind of stressed as why I needed to be in Rome. That so it's apart from the fact that it's Rome, and why not? Everybody needs to be in Rome. And then yeah, the possibility of a residential experience was also something I thought would be nice to have, people that we could constantly talk to. Yeah, so those are the things I remember putting into my application that explained why as someone who works on actually Hellenistic poetry, which seems not connected to Rome because it's Greek poetry, why it actually would work in Rome. Yeah, in particular the professional contacts and the libraries that I was already using in the French Academy, the American Academy, the German one. So those are the things that I mentioned in my application as a scholar. What about you, Katie?
Yeah, I don't think I had it as strong a tie to Rome, perhaps, as the scholars might have had. I did have a strand of my novel that required being in Italy, which I emphasized quite strongly in my application. It's also a collaborative project, and that meant that I felt the environment, the kind of deeply collaborative quality of the academy itself was very, very rare and very, very important. So that I emphasized as well in my application. And then I was interested in the work of Agamben. So of course there were kind of resources in Italy that I could draw from. So it was a kind of three-pronged approach. But my sense from the literature fellows is that you do not need to be writing something that is set in Rome at all. I think it's much more flexible than that, at least for the literature fellows. Correct, Sean, am I wrong? I could
That's
be
correct.
wrong.
No, that's correct. Yes, yes.
I could be
Yeah.
speaking out of turn and giving terrible advice. I don't know.
Literature, music, and visual arts in particular, I mean, and to a degree design, I mean, you may not have a specific need for Rome, but if but there are great research facilities even for these people, and and so I mean I would say as much as you can emphasize how Rome would be helpful, that's always good. Peter, do you want to add anything to that, or would you? Oh, you're on mute right now.
I would say that, the great thing about Rome, and Emerson talked about Rome as a kind of millennial city. If you think about a city that's lived through as much as Rome has, it's a lens through which you can look at almost any aspect of the human condition. Obviously, if you're a scholar who works on anything related to Rome, the empire, the city, you'll have a lot to work on. But as Jackie says, the resources for studying the ancient world in a place like Rome, which for I mean, really since the beginning of the study of the ancient world, has been its center, even more than Athens. I say that very quickly before Jackie gets upset. The resources are spectacular for studying the ancient world, and everybody who does it comes through Rome. But I think it's equally true for a painter or a poet or a composer. Rome, just looking at Rome, walking the city, engaging with any aspect of its history from the present or a second ago to the much deeper past is an enormous opportunity to engage with some really fundamental human experiences. Because everything in the city is marked by time, which is, every cell in our body turns on and off on a diurnal cycle. So, we are time and Rome is time. And so anything that, relates to the human can be accessed through Rome.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is, what was your experience having your partners with you? Can it be distracting, or did you find that they were able to be engaged as well?
Oh,
Well, that's up to you, Katie, because I went by myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think embarrassingly, I spent a fair amount of my interview period asking about what it was like for partners. So it was obviously a pressing issue for me while I was applying. I mean, we had a wonderful time as a family. The academy, one of the magical things about it is that there are so many different places to work, and the spaces that you're given to work are very, very generous. And we were also in an apartment, so we had no trouble kind of locating two separate office spaces for us to work. My husband's also a novelist. The community is incredibly welcoming. There's no sense in which it's a tiered system where the fellows are on one tier and the fellow travelers are kind of somehow operating in another sphere. It's everybody's very, very integrated. And in fact, my husband ended up writing quite a few articles and I think podcasts as well while he was in Rome. To some extent, he was in the library all the time. He was booking a lot of appointments with the librarian. So he had an incredible time. I did not find it distracting, personally, but obviously that's probably a more personal question that would be hard for me to answer on behalf of everybody. But certainly in terms of the academy, they make it very, very easy to be there with your partner.
I just want to add to that a little bit, though, that just so people out there don't have the wrong expectations, that we do have limited spaces. So generally, we wouldn't be able to provide a studio for a fellow, for a partner or a spouse. But there are, there's a library that they can use, obviously not for creating artwork, but if they're doing research, we have, a library that they have 24-hour, everybody who's in the academy community has 24-hour access to our library. And there are just spaces throughout. And if we can't find something in Rome, we might be able to help you find something, or at the academy, we might be able to help spouses find something that's outside if they need a particularly large space or something along those lines. We just want to keep expectations somewhat.
Yes, sorry, Sean.
Yeah,
I should have
that's
clarified.
okay. No, that's fine.
There's some
Yeah.
lovely. There's some really. I mean, it sounds monastic, but they have some lovely carols in the library that are actually
Yes.
beautiful spaces to work. And that was actually often where I ended up working, just because I preferred it. So, yeah, but absolutely not to confuse or overpromise.
Yeah, no problem. Well, we've actually come to our time now. There are a lot more questions I see. And so what we've done in the past is that we'll keep track of these, and I'll send an email to everybody. I'll answer these questions that are remaining, and I'll send an email to everybody who's participating here so that you can all see and make sure your question is answered, because I don't usually attribute them to anybody. But for now, I just want to, as we wrap up, I just want to thank both of you so much for participating. We really appreciate this, and I think it's very important to the people who are listening in to hear, what it's really like from somebody who's been there. So thank you both very much. And any last words or from either?
Apply.
Yes.
And keep applying till you get one. I don't know. More
Good advice. Good advice, I would say.
Yeah, I'm
Peter,
such a
any final
reluctant.
word?
I'm such a reluctant applier for things. I don't like doing it. I hate asking people for recommendations. I'm so glad that I applied to this one.
And I want to emphasize that as well. So a lot of people, you may not get to the point of being interviewed. You may get to the interview and not run the fellowship this year. We definitely encourage people to reapply. We change our juries every year. So it'll be a new set of eyes looking at whatever materials you submit. So you can even use the same project if it's something that you're really passionate about. So I think that's great advice. And I would encourage anybody who's not successful this year to try again, or if you've tried in the past and you're wondering whether you should reapply, to do so. Yeah. Okay, Peter. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to end with a round of thank yous to our participants, panelists tonight. Thank you so much for your time, for your wonderful words. It's exciting to listen to you, and really a thrill to see the way the fellowship experience still kind of courses through your intellectual and creative lives. That's really very fulfilling for us. Sean, thank you very much for all of your work, for organizing this. And to all of you, our participants, the viewers, almost all of you have stayed with us for the hour. Thank you very much. If you have more questions, you can reach Sean, you can reach me through the website. We're happy to answer whatever questions you have. And as both Katie and Jackie said, apply.
Yes. Thank you.